talking about goals today because, fun fact, there is 1 week left until the day that 75% of people who make resolutions abandon them. So we have about a week left to get your goals in order before most people will abandon them. Did you know that, Kathleen, that there's a day? It's actually called Quitter's Day.
Ooh,
And
and
it is
that's mid-January?
1 week from today. Yeah, I think it's the second
Wow.
Friday in January or
Wow.
10 days from. Yeah, crazy, right? Oh, so Podsters, I have Kathleen Lawson back. You might remember Kathleen was on the podcast last year about this time talking about the same thing. Kathleen, before I go down a rabbit hole here, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
All right. Well, I am Kathleen Lawson. I'm a business strategist and I work with service-based business owners, a lot of solo professionals, and I help them take control of their time and their business. So I work with both brand new and established business owners, helping them build the foundation, create the strategies, and implement the routine so they can execute on their big goals.
I love it. Take control of your time. If there was an audience here, I would say, who would like to get more control of their time? And everybody would raise their hand.
That would be everybody. Yep.
That would be, and that's a great way to look at it. If you put the processes in place or you really think things out, which is what Kathleen helps you with, you get your time back.
You do. And that's, I mean, where we first met and all the things that we have done together over the years, all our planning days and Friday mornings and all that. I mean, that was really about taking control of your time.
That's awesome. And it works. So I want to come back to the CEO day because I have something to share with you that actually might surprise you. So here's the question. So, okay, Podsters. Kathleen's a planner. And I am not as much of a planner. I am a planner. She's very uncomfortable right now because I left her a message and I said, Kathleen, I have got some great questions for you, but I am not going to tell you what they are because I want it to be organic. So if you were an animal, no, I'm only kidding.
Hate that question.
It's like, so you have this business where you help business owners really, I'm gonna paraphrase. You help business owners take their big ideas, break them down into manageable pieces, set plans, set a project plan or whatever, line up resources so that they can actually realize these big dreams that they have and the goals, right?
Correct. And a
Yeah.
lot of strategies around execution, because that's very often the biggest hurdle. Like, how do I actually execute on this? We can have a plan, but if you can't execute on it, then you're kind of just sitting there with a plan.
That is such the key because I have a million strategies. So you write down the strategy and then you're like, okay, strategy's done. Woohoo. And
Woo!
then nothing happens. And you're like, well, what happened? Well, you didn't execute. That's so funny. And are you the one? I don't think you are, but you might be. Are you the one that first introduced me to Michael Hyatt? Maybe not.
No, we've talked about Michael Hyatt, but I don't think it came from me. I think
Okay.
you actually asked me if I knew him. So
So somebody wrote the 12-week year. So, do you know who?
yeah, I forget their names. I can almost see the book from here.
Okay. Doesn't matter.
Lennington and something, and yeah.
Doesn't matter. So I'm gonna bring this back to Michael Hyatt in a second. So the concept and what we're going to talk about today is planning your year in 12 weeks. And I would say that doesn't sound very sexy to me. And it didn't sound very sexy to me when I first heard it. What does sound sexy to me is take your goals, your 7 or 9 or 8 goals, however many you have for the year, break those down by quarter, then break that down by week, which is really what the 12-week year is saying. I just think it sounds better my way. So that's how I made my way to Michael Hyatt. So he is a famous entrepreneur. He's written a million books and he has this, it's called Full Focus Planner. It's a
Yeah.
planner and it's a quarterly planner. It's a 12-week planner. And I decided to give it a try. I'm not sure if I like it yet. We can talk about that in a second. But so I'm on their list, their email list, and there was this free webinar on how to live your best life. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to listen to this, right? So I listened to it, and what they said was fascinating. And they were saying anybody can set a goal. It's the executing is where you get yourself in trouble. So one of the first things they had the group do was, okay, write out your goals, right? And then before you hang up this phone, write down one thing that you're going to do to get closer to that goal. Just one thing. You don't have to map out the whole thing, just one. Pick that one thing. And I thought that was really powerful because I'm like, I used to do that all the time. I would write down the goal, I would plan it all out and then I'd walk away from
Yeah, it goes on the shelf, right? And that's
goes
it.
on the shelf and I'd be like, oh, I didn't make my goals are too lofty. And they also said, anyway, so I'm looking for the notes while I'm talking to you. It's the executions. My question was going to be, where do you see people stumble the most when it comes to goal setting? And before you answer, I want to make sure that the podsters out there know Kathleen also came from the corporate world. So you had a corporate executive job for many, many years, went out on your own. So she understand like what she talks about will translate to the corporate world. So where do you see people stumble or get in their own way when it comes to goal setting and execution?
Well, to start on the goal setting, so I mean, you brought up the 12-week year right off the bat. And I
Right.
think that the first thing is that looking too far out, because, and that's why I like the 12-week or the, looking at things in 90 days or the quarter, however you want to word that. But for most, there are certain businesses that have to look further out because of the nature of their business. But a lot of the kinds of people that, like people like you and me, coaches, consultants, service providers, there's no reason that they need to be looking at next November right now. Like you can look, you only need to look so far out. And if you're looking too far out and spending too much time on things that are so far out, like that may never come to fruition. So first of all, taking a closer look is one thing. And then making sure that you're not trying to take on too many things at once. You just mentioned 9 goals. Like there's no way that somebody can
I know.
focus on 9 goals at once. So that's another thing is and people will come to me like, well, I have these 8 things. Help me do these 8 things. It's like, you can't do 8 things right now. Like we need to get more realistic, and you've got to take into account what you're doing day to day in your business anyway. I mean, you're providing
Mm-hmm.
service. So in your case, you're consulting and coaching with clients. So you're doing that, and that's taking up day-to-day time. So how much else can you put on your plate? So it's the time frame, it's how much you're trying to take on. And when you're thinking about what you're trying to take on, you have to take all those things into account, like how much of your how much of your business and the day-to-day business, the day-to-day operations, like what is that kind of sucking up in terms of time and mental energy, the time of year it is, what's going on in your personal life, what resources you might need. You got to like kind of hold all of these things in your head as you set your goals so that you are setting some goals that are realistic, because that's the other thing is like you want to actually achieve them. You don't want to you want to stretch and you want to work and you want to achieve things, but you don't want everything to be so big and so unrealistic that you never get anything done, because that's so discouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, this is the last time I'm going to reference Michael Hyatt, but he says excessive planning is often a fancy way to procrastinate,
Totally,
right?
totally. That is so true. Yes,
So
absolutely. And I
I'm going to
think,
plan, and then I'm going to plan some more, and
yeah,
then I'm going to plan again.
yeah, I did a whole series this year on my social media called Knowing versus Doing, and it was about like
Mhm.
all the things all these things and the things you want to do and things you're supposed to do. But then there's this gap between actually doing them. And I think there is totally, for some people, it is a procrastination thing. Well, because like, well, I'm planning, so I'm working, but you're not actually getting anything done and you're not
Uh,
moving it forward.
yep. Uh, when you said that, I was like, oh my God, he said something about that. And the
So
reason why I
the
said
other
seven,
thing too,
go ahead.
the other thing I was going to say is, so in addition to those problems, then the taking that goal and breaking it down into a plan, because I see a lot of people who show up, in networking things and so forth, and they'll talk about these big goals, but they leave it too big.
Right.
And you know what that's like if you say, oh, I'm going to sit down and do this huge thing, like if you don't have a action items, then it's like, where do I start? And you don't ever actually get off the starting block because it's too big and too hazy and too undefined to make progress on it. So that's the other
Yeah,
thing.
I agree. And that's why one of the things that I often say to teams, to clients, and to myself is at the end of this, how will we know we were successful? And then I back into it from there.
Yes.
So, right, if the goal is like, let's just use a personal goal. I want to focus on my health. That's way too broad,
Yeah. What
right?
does that even mean?
So I want to lower my cholesterol. I want to build my muscle, BMI, whatever the case may be. How will we know we were successful? I'll know I'm successful if my cholesterol is within this range and my BMI is within in this range, and then that's what you move towards. So to me, it's that defining what success looks like and also visualizing that success too is big for me. That's to your point, that's how you take the goal that's too big. Like if you can't define what success looks like with the goal, then I would say it's too big or it's not clear.
It's not clear. Yeah. And
Right.
then, I
Right.
mean, even then, it's funny because I think a lot of goals, people have a goal in mind, but I think they need to focus on the actions because I don't know, sometimes like we talk about sales goals and things like that. Like I have no control over if somebody hires me. Like I can go network, I can do the social media, I can, write proposals and I can do all of those things. But in the end, I have no control over the other side of that. And so I think focusing on the things that you can do and the actions you can take, that's the where you need to put the
Yep.
focus.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay. So how has your business evolved over the past few years?
So one of the biggest things in my business is that I work with so many more brand new entrepreneurs, women,
Mm.
especially women coming out of the corporate world looking to start their business and looking for guidance, reliable resources, somebody to shortcut things for them. So that's a big way my business has changed. And then in terms of the established business owners that I work with, really the structure of, we're going to set these goals on a quarterly basis and then put the structure in place to execute them on a week to week basis. Like it's really like I've focused in more on that and people are implementing that and grabbing onto that because it works and it works for like all different kinds of businesses.
So Podsters, it works so well. Anytime I have or had a big project, I would call Kathleen and say, "Okay, help me break this down." And I remember one of the things that really, really was so interesting, and I see this a lot with my clients today, actually, is lining up the resources that you're going to need. So that could be people, it could be tools, because I often work, everybody jokes I have peaks and valleys. I'm either going 150 miles an hour or I'm going zero. That doesn't really work well when you have people that you're the dependencies. So I can't, call my VA and say, I'm pulling an all-nighter. We need to get this done, and this done. So when you're in business for yourself, you really have to line up these resources because nobody else cares about your crisis.
Right. Right. Well, and I mean, you could have a project that you're moving along on, and then all of a sudden you need, like, I don't know, a designer or a copywriter to help you with some chunk of it. And then things come to a screeching halt while you go out and hire this person. And then what if they're not available for a month? And what if the budget is now different than what you had in mind? Like yeah, there's so many examples of that. It could be, like you said, hiring somebody. It could be a systems thing or a tech thing that you need. It could be, and it's also part of it is the budget. Like I've seen so many people who had something in mind that all of a sudden it's like a lot more expensive than they thought about, and they may have to wait a quarter to do it. Oh, I didn't realize it was going to cost me this. Let's do this now and do this next quarter.
and if you didn't map it out, you'd be in the middle of it, you'd run out of money, and that would be a sunk cost. Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good
Yeah.
point.
And I see
What?
that with like, websites, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Things are getting pricier and pricier. And so
Yep.
people sometimes are not prepared for that.
Why do you think you're seeing so many more women coming out of the corporate world and starting their own business? You think the secret's out that you can do it?
Yeah, I think so. And well, the corporate world's more and more volatile. I mean, I see the layoffs and what women are the primary caregiver on both ends, the kids and the parents. And I think the corporate world's not always as flexible as women need. And I think the secret is out. They realize, oh, I've got options. I don't
Hmm.
have to stay here if it's not working for me. And then also, I mean, people wanting to, sometimes it's not about that. Sometimes it's a passion that they have and and I think they're realizing there are a lot of options. There's more people doing it, and the more that do it, the more, other people want to. And there's also a lot of press about women. I mean, women and, older women, middle-aged women, second act women. They're the biggest piece of the entrepreneur world now, and they're making great strides and doing lots of things. And I think that other women are seeing those opportunities and seeing what people are doing, and for sure. So I've
Yeah.
had talked to so many women this year, and I've had so many people connect me with women who just like, can I just chat with you for half an hour and see if this is something I want to do? I've had a million of those calls this year. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people looking at options.
Yeah. And I also think there's a lot more resources. So I almost feel like, well, when I was your age, I walked both ways in the snow with no sneakers. So when I was first starting out, there really, there wasn't as much specialized support as I see now in terms of it doesn't matter what it is. Website design, yes, there were plenty. Now they're everywhere. Social media support, all of this has evolved. And I think it makes it easier for people to really, when you're ready, put together that business plan and there'll be plenty of support. You particularly, Kathleen, by the way, Podsters, is the most networked person I know. I could be like, Kathleen, I need somebody who can get in a rocket ship, fly me to Jupiter, bring me back. Do you know anybody like that? She'd be like, oh, yeah, I think I might have met someone. Give me a day to get back to you. And then she will all of my best relationships in this space have come, almost all of them from you. So that's pretty
Huh.
powerful. That's
Yeah.
actually very powerful. Yeah,
Well, I mean, there's just great communities and I think we're really fortunate here in the Northeast, especially and we're both in the Boston area, huge entrepreneur community here and lots of people. And yeah, I love meeting people and hearing about what they're doing. It's an exciting world that we're in.
it is. And you took this to a whole new level this year. So tell the podsters about your networking group.
Oh, I was like,
Oh,
I didn't know
she's looking at me like,
what you were
what?
gonna say.
Yeah.
That is that. So I co-lead a chapter of a national networking group called Women's Business League, which started in the Boston area, but they have 50 some odd chapters now, and like half of them are outside of this area. So they're growing all over. And I co-lead that with a mutual friend of ours, Beth Knaus.
So
And
podsters, you might recognize that name. Beth was the original OG co-host of Unmute Yourself, the podcast. So shout out to Beth.
yeah, she's an amazing copywriter and messaging expert. And it's a really cool organization because it's kind of hybrid. We have a local chapter and we have some really great women in that. And we meet twice a month and do all the networking and, a lot of business support and that kind of stuff. But then the overall organization has monthly virtual events and other things that we get to do. So I kind of get the best of both because we've got the smaller group that I really know these women really well, and then I get the opportunity to meet and network with others as well. So it's a really great group, and I enjoy it a lot.
So how would somebody find it?
Women's Business League,
Okay.
and they have a Facebook group and website and all of that, but it's called Women's Business League.
Okay. And it's interesting because when I was asking you about the networking, you said, there's just so many interesting people out there, or I can't remember what you said. And I remember thinking to myself, you're curious and that you're curious, you want to meet other people, you're interested in other people, and that's how you learn and grow the most. I mean, that's everything.
It is. And I always tell, it's funny because when I work with new business owners, sometimes like they are going to their very first networking event and they're very nervous and people come into it very often with, I don't know where this comes from, but they come in feeling very pressured, like they got to go meet people and sell. And it's like, no, what I always tell them is you go network without agenda because you have no idea where
Hmm.
connections are going to lead. And that does take the pressure off. But you're not networking to sell something. You're networking to meet people and find out about them. And you may have resources and connections and information for them. And you don't know who is going to lead you to the next great connection, possibly a client, possibly a resource, possibly a collab, possibly just an interesting person that may never be a business connection, but may be a really cool person for you to meet. So you just don't know. And so yeah, you got to go into it without agenda and just see what happens.
I love that. I really love that because that takes the pressure off too. Then you can be yourself.
You can be yourself. Yeah.
We've
There's no
all been
need
at
to
the
be
event.
telling at that point.
Right. And when somebody's looking at my name tag and then they're looking around for other people, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Am I not important enough for you? Like,
I can't stand that.
I hate
I know exactly what you mean. I
it.
once had somebody at an in-person event walk away from me mid-sentence because they offered me something. I'm like, oh, well, I do that. And they just turned around and walked away. And I was
Oh,
like, where are you going?
right. Meanwhile, that you could have referred clients, you could have helped each other out. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's so funny. I mean, that's just silly. Okay, so it's January 8th. Pretend, because Podsters, we're
Okay.
recording this before the holidays. Actually, we're honored. We are Kathleen's last thing to do before she leaves for the holidays. So it's January 8th, and I have like four really important goals for my business, right?
Mhm.
Okay. How do I break them down into a quarter? Like, what do I do?
Okay, so I would start with exactly what you said about like, defining like what is the goal and how do I know when it's done? I remember we were talking about this last year because we were using as an example a book. Like you were talking about writing a book. And so the example here, I don't know if you wrote it or
I
not.
don't think so, but that's another story. Yeah. It was all
So
planned. It was all planned.
was all planned. So
Yeah.
the example here, and then the book is a great example because, someone says, oh, I want to write a book. Well, is the goal to write the book? Is the goal to write the book and have it published? Is the goal to write the book, have it published, and have a promotional plan? Like, what exactly does write a book mean? And that's, I think, where people run into trouble because they leave it at write a book, and what they actually mean might be something very different. So I think you just got to start with what am I trying to do, and starting to think about like when I want to get this done. And then we break it down. And the breaking it down part is like a reverse engineering. And sometimes it's helpful to mind map, to draw it out. Eventually, you want to get a list of action items. But I find that most people, most entrepreneurs are creative people, and it helps them to visualize it. And, it's funny because when I started, I'm a list person, I started with a list. And then people were kind of stuck. And I finally figured out, oh, they need to like draw, they need to see this. And so we draw it out now. That's how we start. But we just start thinking about the natural breakdown. We kind of break things down into chunks and then we keep breaking it down. So if we're talking about writing the book, let's say there is like, we're writing the book, we're doing a promotional plan, we're talking about like publishing it. So those are like your first chunks. And then you break it down from there and you keep breaking it down until you get action items that are like basically like a very easy, so in the writing part, like maybe it's, I'm going to write this chapter or I'm going to write for an hour, something that when you read that, it's very clear, it's very actionable. It's, like a verb in the middle of the sentence so that you know exactly what you need to do. Because what you don't want to happen is to have something that you look at and you go, oh, I have no idea where to start with that.
Yep.
If
Yep.
that's what it is, then because then what happens is you end up like, well, I'm not going to even worry about
Right.
that right now. I'll go
Right.
do something else.
Right.
And
Yep.
so you need it broken down into very simple, actionable steps. And so you got to keep breaking down. And if creating this plan, if this is not your area of expertise, get somebody to help, and to help you do that because that's what you need in order to have an executable plan so that each week you've got these action items and maybe there's some writing action items and then maybe there's a hire somebody to do the Amazon upload and then the pieces of your promotional plan. It's like you've got to make a list of your ambassadors and you're going to schedule the launch party and but you've got like these very specific small action items that you can actually sit down and do. Because, promote the book is too big and hazy to get into.
Well, it's so interesting you say that because one of the clients that I'm working with, she came to me wanting to write the book. And, that's one of the things we did. Where I'm like, okay, well, the first thing I do with somebody with a book is I'll say, why do you want to write the book? Like, who's it for? Why is it to help with speaking fees? Is it a children's book? Is it to raise awareness about a disease? Like, why do you want to write it? And as you were talking about everything else, the promotion, the marketing, the uploading, the design, the cover design, the manuscript, the admin support, registering with Kindle or KDP, if that's what you decide you want to do, all of those things. So as we were meeting, I was putting together this promo plan for her. And as I was writing the promo plan, she doesn't know this and she listens to this podcast. I was having so much anxiety because I'm like, oh my God, this is so much. So I know this. I wrote a book, I promoted a book, and it was great. And there are so many other things. So many, like your street team, pre sale, what's the name going to be? It is, whoa. So if you don't map it out, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I remember like years ago helping you with the promo plan on Unmute Yourself, and you had hired a PR specialist, and so we had the plan, but it was still like so many pages long, and there was so much detail to it that yeah, you can't do that. I mean, very for a lot of the people I'm working with, I mean, there's a lot of like creating a program or a workshop. That's like a very common thing among a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the solo professionals. And so we break that down into very similar to the book. Like there's the content, and within the content, then you've got like the actual content, you've got handouts, you've got a presentation deck, and then there'll be logistics like where, the date and a registration link and an email sequence that goes along with that. And then you've got the promotional plan. So you'll have a social plan and you'll have emails and, ads and, whatever. So like that might be how that gets broken down. Another really common goal is not so much a project goal, but it might be about nailing down or refining or improving routines in your business. So very often it'll be something like, I want to improve my networking follow-up, or I want to improve or get better with my business development activities. And so in that case, the plan is more about identifying what that routine is. So we lay out the pieces. So let's say you decide, okay, I want to, I'm awful about my networking follow-up. So then we say, all right, well, what is that routine? So we decide after every person we meet, we're going to send an email. So we're going to write a templated email. And then we're going to implement a CRM. And so we're going to load that information in. And then we know that, we're going to connect with them on LinkedIn. And then we're going to, so we identify this routine, and then we have to think about what do I need to put in place to ensure that I'm doing it. So back to the execution piece. But so a lot of the goals are that they're more about like identifying a routine that we want to put in place.
So it's interesting. There's just so much that I want to say. Bringing it back to the corporate world, because I'm thinking as you were talking about networking, it's so funny. So Podsters, Kathleen just said, after your networking event, so you create a template email. I cannot tell you, I was in sales for 25 years. I would have piles of business cards and I would write every thank you. Everybody got a thank you note, either a note or an email. And I would recreate it from scratch every time. So now, duh. And so now picture you're on the plane, and I got better as I got more seasoned. I would say, I'd say my process was you're going to do it on the plane. That way, when you go home, when you land, you can relax and not have to worry about the follow up. But can you imagine if I was just cut and paste with a little bit of personal thing in there? That it would have taken me a fraction of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have to think about that. Like you've got to take some time up front to create that routine.
Right.
And because otherwise you're just always winging everything. This is about, taking the decision out of the moment, like just kind of deciding up front,
So
this is what we're
funny.
going to say, this is what we're going to do. And then I don't have to like think about it. I just do it.
And I'd be like, oh, I really should link in with them too. Like, whereas if I had this, okay, here's the email that's going to go out and I'm going to personalize it. The next step is going to be to link in with them with a personal note. And then the next step is to write another email, time it to go out 2 weeks from now or whatever. Like processes change lives. Okay. That's all I'm going to
Totally.
say. Processes change lives.
Well, and not just on the efficiency and time management and keep you sane end, but also on like how how you're showing up to the other person.
Yeah, of
You're
course.
just coming across so much more professional.
Yeah. All right. So there's a couple other things that you talked about that I want to go back to. So, Podster, sorry, I just drank some ice. I did go to, I was going to write another book. And Kathleen, whatever, we worked through the whole thing. Everything was mapped out, executable, and I didn't do it. And this is really interesting because when I was listening to this 1 hour webinar, and I'm like, me, I'm like, I don't need to listen to somebody else tell me how to set goals. Like, this is what I do. And it was interesting because in this webinar, they said, make sure you're passionate about this goal. Because if you're not going to do it. I'm just looking for what they said. Identify your why. Yep, which I say all the time, by the way. Hello, we have hundreds of podcast episodes on it. But it was make sure it's resonating with you. So again, January 8th is when this is being aired. If you have already set your goals and one of them you're just not into, get rid of it. Get rid of it.
Totally.
So I had the plan for the book. And then I'm like, you know what? I don't really think I want to write this book anymore. So I didn't. So you're going to check in from time to time and make sure it's still a goal or a priority.
Yeah, that it's still in alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way I kind of take people through choosing those goals. So we always start with reflection on the last few months. So we look backwards first, and I think that's really important. And I think it's so interesting to me, all of the insights that people gain. So we look back, like what were the wins? What didn't, what were the missed opportunities?
Mhm.
What did you procrastinate on for the last quarter? What were you worried about? How did you do? So we kind of go through all of these questions. And it's so interesting to me because I just had actually one of my one-to-one clients yesterday. She had just done it and she's like, oh my gosh. She goes, this and this. And then I realized, that, and it's like all these things that, come up for them. And then I have them start brainstorming in a couple of different categories. We start with like revenue. So that could be anything from, a new book, new offers, sales goal, whatever that might be. And then marketing could be a new strategy, could be improving an old one, just different marketing things. Operations, what do what's giving me heartburn in my business I need to fix, or do I want to put a new process in place? And then the part that I call the CEO routines, and it's all the things about me and how I'm managing my business and boundaries, and maybe I need new team members or whatever it might be. So those are kind of the categories that we brainstorm in. And then we think about all these things that we said in the beginning, like how many things can I tackle? What's going on in my business right now? Okay, we're talking January, February, March. What happens in my life personally? All the things I want to consider. And then the question I ask them is, what's going to make the biggest impact right now? What do you want to focus on right now? And that's the way we sort of prioritize, and what's next.
One of the things you just said that I think is very cool and that a lot of people don't know is available to them. When you plan like this, when you do this 12-week planning or 3-month planning, quarterly planning, you can adjust for whatever is happening in your life, like you just said. So, for example, let's say I'm going to be in Italy for 3 weeks. Okay, then I can, with really good faith and a clear conscience, say, I'm not doing much that month because I planned for it and I knew that I didn't want to do that. And that's the beauty of this planning is that you get to take the time when you want to take it.
Exactly. I've gotten into this routine of heading into summer every year. I do this workshop around summer planning, and it's, really big with people who have younger kids because, like it or not, their whole world is upside down in
They're home,
summer.
like it or not.
But yeah, but you still, and plus, like where we live, especially too, so many people, houses on the Cape, houses in Maine, like people are taking time off. And a lot of people are totally fine with having their business kind of come down a notch. You
Mm-hmm.
don't want it to fall apart, but it's like,
Mm-hmm.
let's be intentional. Because the thing is, here's what happens if you don't do this is like you go into it like thinking that everything's going to stay the same, but then you're working a third less and nothing is going to stay the same. So you know what? That's not working for you. So let's be intentional. Let's say up front, you know what? I'm not going to be working 3 days, whatever you're going to change. and then let's figure out what do we need to do over this time frame so that, we do what we need to do and then we're ready to, pick it up whenever. But at least we're being intentional. We're not going to at the end be like all disappointed that things didn't happen the way, we wanted. So yeah, so it's all about intentionality. And plus so many people's businesses have different seasonalities to them. And this is a way to take that into account because I mean, you come out of the sales world. I doubt that anybody's sales is, a whole year's and
Right.
divided by 12 and exactly the same across 12 months. So this way you can plan for whatever you need to plan for.
Yeah, totally. And I learned the hard way. I remember one year, I don't know if I knew you that year. I must have. I took July off. And then when August came around, I was like, well, where is everybody? I didn't, I took it off. I knew I was going to take it off and I told everybody I was going to take it off. Okay. And then like my business just bottomed out for probably 8 weeks at least. And I was like, whoopsie, could have been more intentional about that. So yeah.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I talk about a lot is it's another 90-day thing, but it's the 90-day rule where it's around marketing. Like the things that you do today are going to impact you most 90 days out because,
Oh,
you're
interesting.
planting. Well, if you think about it, you're planting seeds, you're talking to people, things take a while to percolate. And it's the same is true in reverse. Like if you've got nothing going on, I would look back a couple months and think about what you were doing, which is probably what you saw there. Like you took all this time off in the summer and then it took a while for you to catch back
Right.
up.
Yep. Yep.
And so when I'm working with people who are taking time off, I mean, I always go for the business development activities first. It's like you've got to keep that if you do nothing else, you've got to keep some level
Right.
of that going. Otherwise, you're going to have nothing going until like November. You're going to be out for months. So you've got to keep at least that bit going.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. I obviously did not know you or consult with you at that
I would
time.
have told you.
I know you would have helped me. Okay, let me just keep looking through my list. So, oh, this is a good one. You ready?
I'm ready. Lay it on me.
What I feel like I don't know what I feel like. I feel like I'm on like some kind of a game show interview. So what from your business life or what from your business do you pull into your personal life in terms of planning?
What from my business do I pull
Yeah,
into my planning? I mean, into my
no, into your
personal life?
personal life. So what do you do in business that you also do in your personal life in terms of planning? Like I've seen in my life a lot of like crossover or spillover from how I approach my business to how I approach other things in my life. So even like my goal setting, we're talking about goal setting. So I'm setting goals in different areas of my life, not just my business, but that process is the same for my personal life or my professional life. So like I see you as a superhero planner. Like that's how I see you. Like I want to see your grocery list, honestly. That's how So what do you take from your business? Like what spills over into your personal life?
So it's funny you say that, the grocery list, because that's probably the thing. So I think one of the things from one of the like philosophies around business that I take into my personal life is the eliminating decisions
Oh, I love that.
because and that's what that's kind of the crux of what we're doing here with all this planning and strategy and
Mm,
everything is like we're eliminating decisions because decision making is draining and making the same decisions and over is exhausting. And so I I'm trying to, if you think ahead, you make the decision once, you're not constantly making decisions. So I do a lot of that for sure. And one of the places it shows up the most is meal planning. I am a crazy meal planner. But I've been doing it for years and I've raised 5 kids. And so the last thing I want to do is at 5 o'clock at night decide what's for
what we're
dinner
having for
and then
dinner.
figure
Right.
out do I have to go to this, like if I have to go to the store, I'm gonna like lose my
We're
mind.
getting takeout. Right.
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 So I stumbled upon this app a few years ago called plantoeat.com. And and so what I do, So first of all, you can upload recipes. So like when you see like online some recipe off of a website, like I can download it onto that app. So
Okay.
I've got all these recipes, and then I've got a planner, and I can drop the recipes, or I can just make a
Oh,
note once,
wow.
and then I hit a button, and it creates my shopping list.
Uh-uh. Wow,
So
really?
so I've got like these recipes I'm going to have every day, or I put in a note, like if it's not a recipe, it's just something I'm doing, whatever. And then there comes the grocery list, and I have a weekly list of like staples that I always buy for the house. I just boop, pop that over. That shows up on the list.
Into the app?
Yeah, it's in the app. There's like a list, like a staples list, and then it's like, you just move it over into your weekly list. So now I've got a list, and I can either have it on my phone or I can print it out if I want. And I go to the
Wow.
store and I've got my list, and I already know what's for, dinner every week. I've got I shopped, I've got everything. I don't have to think about it. So I literally, when I'm done for the day, I can just go in the kitchen and cook.
That is that might be the best tip I've ever heard. So I want to make sure I understand this. It's called plantoeat.com. You
Yes.
download the app. I find a recipe. Let's say it's for shepherd's pie. I go into my app. I drag the shepherd's pie recipe over to Wednesday. And at the same time, I can drag it into my grocery list or whatever, and it will generate a list of groceries that I need.
Right. So the grocery list is by day. You can say, I want my grocery list from like last Tuesday to, next
Oh my
Monday.
God,
And
this is
then those are the
nuts.
days. And then you can go through, you look at it and you're like, oh, I already have this. I have this. I have this. You cross it off.
What
And
a
so
game changer.
here's another thing about it. You can be friends with people on it. So if
Oh,
you
come on.
download it and we're friends, you have access to all my recipes.
Okay, I'm joining immediately. So plantoeat.com, Podsters. But this is what I mean. Talk about getting time back.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think about how much time I'm like, okay, well, I love that. It's actually fun for me to pin recipes on Pinterest. Like, that's how I relax. Then I print it out. Then I make my list. Then I go to this, and then if I have multiple, this is happening right now because I'm doing a bunch of holiday cooking this
Yeah.
weekend. I have them all printed out and then I write them down and then I categorize them by where they are in the store. This would save me so much time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
impressive.
it's a big time saver for sure. Plus the stress. I remember a few years ago hearing the stat that, so I think it's around 83 or 84% of Americans don't know what's for dinner every day at 4 o'clock. And that stresses me out to no end.
Well, that's probably why 84% of Americans eat like crap.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
if you don't know what you're having for dinner, you're going to reach for whatever's easy.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. By the way, I made up that 84% of Americans eat like crap stat in case anybody's wondering. Okay. Back to the 12-week year or quarterly
Okay.
goal setting. What, all right. So we have define success, break down or reverse engineer from that success. Oh, let's talk about mind mapping. Sorry. Did you want to say
Yeah.
something first? Okay.
No,
So the reason why I love everything you're saying about mind mapping is, I'm really big on visioning and the vision for how you want your life to be. I think you were there for one of the first times I did that visioning exercise at the
yeah, I did.
social
Yeah.
conference. So tell me about mind mapping because I remember this vaguely, but tell the podsters a little bit more about what you mean by that.
So it's basically, a piece of paper and a pen, or you could do it online if you wanted to, but it's really about drawing. So you've got like your central idea, which would be your goal, like it's create a workshop. And then you start like taking the pieces off of there. So it's like, okay, I need content for this. I need like logistics around this workshop, like where I'm going to do it and when and how people are going to sign up. I need a promotional plan. And then from there, you start, all right, so I have
It's
content,
like
all
a
right, so I've got
spoken
to
wheel.
write the
Yeah.
presentation. I need handouts. I need a presentation deck. Yeah, I think that's it for that. Okay, promotional plan. I'm going to need, this. I'm going to need this. So it's a way to like draw it out and just get all the stuff out of your
Mm,
head.
I
And
love
then you
that.
can take that and write it up into a plan and add due dates and, who's going to do it and that kind of thing.
I would even say I love this idea. So it looks almost like a giant amoeba or a giant atom or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
that's what mine always looks like. Yeah.
I
It
don't
looks
know.
like it looks very biological.
It
Yes.
looks like this.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I would even say, because I'm thinking about this for me right now, I have a big flip chart, as you know. I love my flip charts. I haven't used those in forever. I would do it and I would leave it and come back to it, probably.
Yeah, probably
Yeah,
could
that's
add other
that's
things to it. Yeah.
great.
That's my favorite way. I've got mine right over here on the floor in colored pens. Like I sit on the floor, crisscross applesauce with my colored pens and a big piece of
I
paper. And that's how that
love
helps
it.
me think and
That's
create. The other thing I didn't want us to pass by is thinking ahead about obstacles, because
love
that
it.
saves a lot too. Because, as you start thinking about it, most of us know what's going to trip us up. And so if you don't, it's kind of like the procrastination thing. It's like, well, I kind of know that's going to be there, and that's my
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
procrastination thing. But if I look at it ahead of time, like, you know what, I'm going to run into a tech problem here, or I know I'm just not going to do it. Well, then, you know what, like we need to figure out what's going to make you do it. Do you need an accountability? Do you need a coworker? Do you need like somebody to sit there with you while you do it? And if that's the case, then let's set that up. Like, what is it going to, like, what do we need to do? What's going to be the problem? What's going to get in our way?
Love it. I love it. And I like that you gave a tactical example, so like a tech problem. And also, what obstacles are you going to throw at yourself? So, is it motivation? Is it accountability, or squirrel syndrome because you can't focus on one thing? And how are you going to overcome it? So you plan for it, you know what's going to happen. So let's figure out how to overcome it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
What's it going to
great.
take?
I love it.
And there's like these days, well, both in the corporate world and entrepreneurial space, you've got opportunities. A lot of people need like the co-working sort of situation. They need somebody there with them. And you can do that in the corporate world and you can do that in the entrepreneur world, and that's what it takes a lot of people, because then you've got a time on the calendar, somebody else sitting there, you're working on it. It's like
That's
now
great.
you have
Yeah.
no other, it's not like you're sitting there by yourself in your office and nobody can see if you don't do it.
Well, so that brings me to I wanted to talk about this CEO hour. So explain to people what CEO hour is, and then I'm going to come back in and tell you why I love it and what happens when you don't do it.
Okay, so CEO Hour is a weekly planning practice, and it is time you carve out every week to plan your week. And it's there's a number of things. It's one, getting your time under control, so you're getting your schedule set. It's also your work plan. So what am I going to do during that time? And this is where you get to check back in with these bigger projects and goals, because so this is a part of how you execute on those, because
Mm-hmm.
now every single week you have an appointment to look at your plan and make sure that you're moving forward on all your action items. We've also built other things into it. We use that time to do financial review, networking follow-up, a lot of like the CEO type thing. So it's this time you spend every week to work on your business and make sure that all the things are moving forward. But at the crux, it's really about taking control of your time, because it's like, here's the time I have and here's what I'm going to do with it.
It is a game changer. So, how many of you Podsters, because I feel like you're in the room, when Kathleen said plan your week, you thought, oh, sit down and look at my calendar and plan my calendar. That's what she means. That's always my default. Oh, I'm going to plan my week. And it would be, I'm going to look at my calendar and make sure everything's okay. What Kathleen's talking about that's cool is you take this hour, and yes, that's one of the things you do, and that's where you start is what does your calendar look like? Do you have buffer time in between appointments? Do you have four calls in a row and no time to go to the bathroom in between them? So maybe you want to move one around, or whatever the case is. Travel time, did you block time to get back from the airport? All that stuff. But it doesn't stop there. It's the networking follow up, it's the financial review, it's the how am I doing with my major projects? Because if you're just looking at your calendar and saying, okay, I plan my week, that's just your appointments. That's not your week. That's only a fraction of your week. Total game changer. Total game changer. And I will tell you from my own experience, when I don't do it, I'm a mess. Like,
You have to
mess.
stop and do it. Like, I've seen people do that. Like they don't show up and do it because they're on vacation. They got something else planned, and so they try and kind of dive into the week. And by like Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning, they're like, you know what, Kathleen, I just need to stop and do this
Yep.
because I have no
Yep.
idea what's going on, and
Yeah.
I'm a
You're flying by the seat of your pants, and that's no way to live. I mean, it's really. Do you have a tool for that, or is that something?
I built it into a course.
Ah, you have a course?
I do. So
Is
you
it so?
can,
Yeah.
so this is really cool. So there's a couple pieces to it. So it's the CEO hour, and there's videos to take you through like the first or second time you do it.
Right.
Bit by bit tells you what to do, what to look at, common mistakes, all the things that trip you up. And then once you've done it a couple times and you're, quicker at it and you're good, I have a little bonus video in there that is high level, and just you can turn that on and it'll facilitate it for you really quickly so you don't have to listen to all the detail.
How do you know if you're at that level? Is there like a
You got to
test?
do it once you do it a couple times and you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing now. Then you can listen to that and it facilitates it for you and you can
Oh,
just go
that's
through
really
it.
cool. So, for those of you that are listening and you work in the corporate world, this works equally as well. A
Yeah.
100%.
Yep, I've had some corporate clients and they've implemented this as well.
This is really cool. And my favorite part, what's your favorite part of CEO hour? What's your favorite tactical thing that we do?
Sticky notes.
How'd you know I was going to say that? Is that everybody's
This is
favorite?
everybody's favorite part
So
because
tell the podsters what that is.
so I call it sticky notes.
Very sophisticated.
Very sophisticated.
Right.
So, during the week, you write all these notes down, and very often people do them on sticky notes, which is why I call it that. I personally don't actually write on sticky notes. I write all over the margins of my planner. And these are the little things that you write down, like, oh, I want to call so and
Right.
so.
Yep.
Oh, I want to buy that book. Oh, here's a good blog post idea. Oh, so it's all these things that you write down. And then for most people, they totally lose track of them. And they're
Hmm.
like, oh, I know I had this somewhere and I forgot. Oh, I did write that down, but I forgot to do it. So what we do during this time is we go through and we take all those notes and we either action them or put them somewhere so they can be actioned. So quick things like, oh, I want to schedule an appointment. You can just do that real fast.
Right.
If it's longer term things, then you get that into your list, wherever that might be. You might have an online task management system or you put it in your plan, wherever you keep track of those things, you can do that. So then you can basically kind of put a bow on the week and say, done. I'm not losing track of anything. All my brilliant ideas have been captured. I can, very confidently close the book on this week and know that I've got everything and we're all set and we're good to go.
I love it because I was going to say, explain to people why you do it on Fridays, and also a game changer. So imagine going into the weekend knowing you are all set up for next week. There is nothing more you can do.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It is. I was kind of all over the place before I settled on Friday. Like I started on Mondays, and it was like Mondays just are.
You're off and
It took
running.
me half the
Yeah.
day to get
Right.
going, and
Right.
it was a mess. And then I tried Sundays. I'm like, what am I doing? I don't want to work on Sunday.
Right.
And plus the other thing too, when I did it on Monday, I couldn't remember things from the
I was
previous.
going to say
I
Friday,
was
the
like,
week is still fresh in your mind.
yeah, so it was good. And then I love like you just dive in Monday morning and
Yep.
you are organized and you're set, you have a plan, you know what you need to do. Yeah, it's a game changer, like you said. And then the weekends, you don't worry about it. You don't spend the weekend going, oh my gosh, did I ever do this? Or do I have a meeting this week? Am I all set for that? Did I get that
Hmm.
proposal done? You've already
Oh,
looked at everything. You know you're all set.
totally. And I like it's an end of the week ritual. Like I know that after that hour, I'm done. Like, I mean, I'll probably still work, but it's good. Like I'm good. And
Yeah,
oh,
me
it feels
too.
so
I do
good.
that on Friday morning. I do a little bit of stuff on my business and then I'm usually out by noon. So that's my end of the week
It's awesome.
uh, ritual. I
It's
love it.
awesome. Okay, so we're going to make sure that we link to your CEO course,
Yep.
and we're going to link to. Did you say you have something where you look backwards and reflect
I
on what
have
worked?
my 2024 reflection guide, so
Great.
I'll give you the download for that as well.
Okay.
So it's a nice thing that people can do in January to get themselves set for the new year.
I'm going to friend you on plantoeat.com.
Okay, awesome. Hey,
Tell us where we can find you. Where can the podsters find you?
so my website is kathleen-lawson.com. And then I am on all the platforms under Kathleen Lawson Strategist. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you're hanging out, I'm there.
Great.
YouTube.
And Yeah, we're going to link to all this stuff in the show notes anyway. What else you got? What else you got for us?
I
That's
don't
it.
know. I think
That's it.
I
All
gave you
right.
meal planning.
I mean, I should air this January 1st, but we're going to air it on the 8th. I'm going to sign off to the Podsters. So, Podsters, well, first of all, thank you, Kathleen. I can't
Thank
believe
you.
has it been a year since I've actually seen you?
It
Probably.
could be. Yeah. And I remember when we did it last year, I was without power for like close to a week. It was in the
Oh,
middle, there was a big
yeah.
storm and we had no power. I had to go record at my dad's house.
Oh, that's so funny. I remember. That's the joys of living in the Northeast. Thank you for coming, Podsters. We have more special guests coming up for all of your new goals, new year energy. You know where to find Kathleen, and I will see you next week. Peace out, Podsters.